Good morning, America. Welcome to Taxes Made Easy. Hubert Johnson here, and today we're going to be focusing on student loans and what the IRS team deems as good debt versus bad debt, what they will give you full credit for versus what they're going to completely ignore, even though it's a real expense that you're dealing with. So that's a lot of people get into trouble is they don't understand what the IRS will actually give them credit for versus what they won't. So a lot of people are spending money. They do have costs, but when the IRS won't allow for those costs, then it makes it even harder for them to afford their bills and get a good resolution from the IRS. So again, stay tuned. We're going to be sharing a lot of good information. There's a lot of information throughout the world about taxes as well. But again, we're going to be focusing more than anything else on student loans and how that can affect your tax situation with the IRS. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Got a lot of news to cover. First thing, I'm gonna it's kind of interesting. All the different opinions. I haven't really talked about Joe Biden since the debate. Again, that's pretty much squarely in the realm of politics. And I think the biggest reason why I don't like talking about it, especially on the show, is nobody knows. Nobody knows. But I thought it was kind of humorous that I came across two articles. The first one from the New York Post, talking about how Democrats are going to get President Biden off the ticket. And he cites a bunch of people, talks about how the donors are turning against him, etc. And then the very next article, and I'm not even going to go into these articles, was how Biden will get all the way to the election. So depending on, and these are opinion pieces, but you can see those all over the place. It just, there's no telling what's going to happen. I think it's kind of humorous to see how you have talking heads and opinion makers guessing all over the place what's going to happen. We don't know. But what I am concerned about is this next article I'm going to share. We talked a lot about France in the last few days, and with the far left achieving the majority or a plurality, the highest number of votes in the French Parliament. That was, the center left working with the far left. One of the big concerns is anti-Semitism. So we've seen a lot of problems in the United States lately regarding anti-Semitism. And if you're for Palestine, against Palestine, that's fine. It doesn't justify beating up people. It doesn't justify intimidation, threats of actions, and criminal acts. So again, that's a very clear line. Now we talk about it here in the United States. Anti-Semitism can be a lot worse. And France has been one of the breeding grounds for a lot of anti-Semitism. So you have French-Isrealis citizens in high places and connected, telling Jews, flee France because of the feared anti-Semitism from the left. And in some ways, it's like the far right has always been painted, sometimes justly, sometimes unjustly, as anti-Semitic. And so a lot of them were worried about the far right gaining control. But as you go through this article, plenty of people, French Jews, flew home to France to cast their votes. And they voted for the far right. Because even though it was established by openly anti-Semitic politicians today, the worst anti-Semitism is really coming from the far left, the communists, and they even call themselves communists, and radical Muslims. So they really have joined arms to form the far left, and there's a lot of fear of what could be happening in France. So again, this goes to freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, basic human rights here that are the foundation of Western civilization. The problem, you get rid of those basic rights, horrible human atrocities happen. So, anyway, kind of scary news. Yeah, and to think today that Jews have to flee another country, no future. French Jews express fear. It's just kind of scary. I mean, what kind of world are we building? We always think that it would be a better society. And just going through some of the quotes here, 89% of Jewish students experience anti-Semitism. I'm not Jewish, but again, I think when we erode freedom of religion for some, we erode it for all. So again, kind of a scary article um, about what's happening in France and other Western countries. So, interesting article here. And when you're coming up with numbers like these, you're guesstimating more than anything else. But this is a bipartisan commission that provided an estimate of the total damage from the COVID pandemic at $18 trillion in economic damage. And they have recommendations for holding China's government accountable. Do you think that'll ever happen? Don't hold your breath. I honestly don't see. I mean, Trump has toed the line with China, but again, he talked tough with them, made some trade deals, but then stopped. I think China needs to be treated like the enemy it is. That's my personal opinion, but they are not our friend. And the scary part is that they were working with Fauci and NIH to do gain of function research. So they were working with the U.S. government to produce and do this crazy research. And we know about it. We supported it. We funded it. So I think we need a lot more transparency from our own government as well as the Chinese government. And I'd love to see that happen. A lot of the people that enabled the lack of transparency just thrown out of office. So just to break this down a little bit, they're saying 8.6 trillion caused by excess deaths, 1.825 trillion in lost income. I think that's much higher. 6 trillion due to chronic conditions such as long COVID, and mental health losses of 1 trillion, and education losses of 435 billion. I mean, the true cost of shutting down kids and schools for kids for a year or more really is yet to be seen. And we have a whole generation of kids, especially the younger they were, the worse it was. When you slapped masks on little kids, it's now been discovered that they have a harder time developing speech, reading facial cues. Their ability to interact socially is greatly inhibited because you can't see someone's face, you can't see someone's mouth, you can't learn to read those facial cues when it's all covered by a mask, and that's been particularly tough for younger kids that were kindergarten, preschool, etc. And they share germs like anyway. Masking little kids is another issue altogether. But again, the estimated total cost of $18 trillion. And we're going to see the impacts from COVID and the damages continue. We're still seeing it every day. Okay, so unfortunately, I feel like I'm just the bad news sharer today. This one, I just clicked off of this. This is another Fox News article. Let me go ahead and get that back up. Home prices just hit another all-time high. So it kind of goes into, it's so crazy here. The median U.S. home just hit $397,954 in June. So a 5% increase from a year earlier. And ironically, this is what people look at. That's what looking at an average interest rate of 6.86% for a 30-year mortgage. It's now $2,749. So it's slightly lower than April's record, but that's because mortgage rates have gone down. But the total price of homes have gone up. And whenever interest rates go down, demand increases. People are looking for interest rates, holding their breath, waiting for interest rates to get a little better to purchase homes. But you have all these people out there. So the moment things get better, you have all kinds of people looking to purchase homes, which again drives the price up. So what are the factors driving this? Years of underbuilding, and then you had the rapid rise in mortgage rates and expensive construction materials. So the cost of materials, inflation, everything has gone hand in hand to drive the prices up. You have the golden handcuff where people that got locked in at 3% don't want to sell. So, and then talks about that the interest rates just aren't going to go back down anytime soon. We had a high of 7.79% in the fall of 2023. It's slowly gone down to 6.95%. But again, that's double what it was before the pandemic. And that's based on the Fed rate. Depending on what happens with interest rates, with the economy, there's a lot of concern still in the economy. I doubt if we do see a rate increase, it's going to be later on in the year, or rate decrease. But if the bad news continues, they might actually increase the interest rates as well. So home supply is down 34.3%, which is why prices are going up. You just don't have the available homes. Construction is more expensive than ever, and it's not keeping pace. And so another little fact here, most homeowners are twice as willing to sell their home if their rate is 5% or higher, but 80% of mortgage holders currently have a rate below 5%. So 80% of people are holding on their home. Why would they sell and move into a more expensive home and get a higher interest rate? So we are coming up on another break in just a few seconds. I think I have enough time to just... The next few articles are just more tax proposals, a bunch of different ways, and then we're going to get into the topic of the day. So the question is, how can we make things more affordable, not only for us, but for future generations? And really that's going to tie into our topic of the day for student loans. And we're going to be getting to that shortly after our next break. So stay tuned, and we'll talk about how do we make things more affordable, not only for us, but for our children, as we help them prepare for the future and help us deal with the IRS in the best way possible for you. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for staying with us here at Taxes Made Easy. So, the next article we're going to focus on is another tax proposal here in Denver, Colorado. So, in Denver, they're proposing to raise sales taxes over 9%. Which is interesting that they're doing this because sales taxes are considered to be some of the most regressive taxes out there, in that it hits the people that have to spend most of their income just to meet their necessary expenses. So if people are just getting by or living paycheck to paycheck, a 9% sales tax hits them the hardest because they have to spend most of what they make every single month. And so again, their goal is to raise $100 million to help who? For affordable housing projects to help the homeless. But again, instead of doing something that would not affect the poorest, the working poor the most, they're again considering, and they probably will pass an additional tax. So going throughout Colorado, most of the major cities do have 9 to 10% sales tax, well, 8, 9 to 10. There would be exceptions for food, fuel, medical supplies, and personal hygiene products, but everything else would be affected by those taxes. So a little bit of relief there, but again, it's a second sales tax measure that would be put to death. So there's another sales tax measure that would be proposed in November at the same time. So if it's approved, it would go up to 9.31% in Denver. That's 2.9 state sales tax, 4.81 city and county, and 1% sales tax for the transportation district. So, sorry. Winter Park actually goes up to 11.2% sales tax rate, highest in the state. And so it really kind of goes up and down as to how high the city sales tax go. Again, this is all to create 19,000 affordable units by 2033, so 8 years, which is currently 25,000 short of the 44,000 needed. While this is commendable, I mean, you're making mostly, this is going to hurt the poorest the most. And ironically, this is to take the people that are homeless and put them in the homes. The costs are usually much, much higher than anticipated with this. It really is kind of sad. I mean, with a lot of homeless shelters, a lot of them are affordable housing for the homeless. If they're not taken care of correctly, they can get destroyed, and a lot of money can be wasted. Santa Cruz built hundreds of small houses for the homeless, and they got destroyed. Toilets ripped out, all the copper wiring was ripped out. I mean, it was a matter of 6 to 9 months, and the whole project was absolutely destroyed because people went in that were drug users, etc. And I'm sure it wasn't everybody, but the vast majority of the homes, small homes, were made unlivable and had to be condemned. So again, it needs to be done the right way, or we're just throwing money away. California is finding new ways to tax the internet. They're not the only ones, though. Maryland and New Jersey are also, I believe it was New Jersey, is trying to find new ways to tax. Oh no, it was Canada. Canada law taxing links to media outlets. So the goal here is to help support journalism in California by taxing links to media outlets. They've already passed the supermajority in the Senate, and they're going back. One of them has already been passed in the Assembly, and the other one is going back to the Assembly. So they still both have to be passed by the Assembly. Shouldn't be a problem for the Democrats to go ahead and pass those. And it's a 7.25% gross tax on receipts in state digital advertising, for one, and the other one is about the Journalism Preservation Act that would tax companies to fund local journalism. So as you go through this, taxing the internet is always very tricky, and the question is who gets hurt the most. 77% of U.S. business advertising is digital, and mostly online advertising. So of course, states are looking for ways to tax this flow of revenue and flow of money. But again, who are they really going to hurt here? When you hurt and tax businesses, first of all, more and more businesses are fleeing California. They can't afford to operate there. But we saw this French tax do this on digital advertising. And the research shows that as much as 55% of the burden went straight to the consumers in the form of higher prices. Now, 45% of it was absorbed or the cost passed on other ways. But again, if companies have to pay higher costs for advertising, their own prices have to go up. And we're already seeing massive inflation. We're already seeing a lot throughout the country. So ad-supported models become less viable. It changes compared to gated content, which means if you want content, you have to pay for it. So again, it just makes it more expensive, more exclusive to access information under the internet when you tax it. It's been also legally suspect, which normally doesn't stop California. It's been struck down. Maryland's bill is currently under a lot of litigation. So again, it's whether or not that's even going to be permissible legally is another question altogether. So it just kind of goes into this. And talks about the financial challenges of local journalism are really troubling, but a digital advertising tax just taxes people to access links, which just makes it more expensive and may leave local media even worse off as major search engines and social media respond by blocking those links rather than have to pay each time a user posts a link. So if you make something more expensive, you tax it, you make it less available to the public. So if they want more access to news, this could be very counterproductive. So this next article is about taxes for your future. And I want to, I actually have a guest coming on in 2 days. He's a financial advisor and has a lot of ideas. And we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff. So I'm just going to touch on this. And this is an article from CNBC. And really focuses on mixing up your retirement plans, doing pre-tax, after-tax Roth, using taxable brokerage accounts, ways that you can, if you have a variety of different kind of investments, when you need more money, you can take it out of your post-tax, after-tax Roth accounts and not have your income go up because you've already paid taxes into those accounts. Then you don't have to be taxed. Then when you pull it out, you don't get taxed on your gains. So Roth accounts can be very helpful, as well as other kinds of brokerage accounts. So again, when we have just on Thursday, a couple days, we'll have that on a financial advisor. We're going to go through all this in detail. The whole session is just going to be focused on him and how can working with a good financial advisor save you money in the long run. And that's really our goal, is to help not only deal with taxes, but deal with issues moving, lower your tax bill into the future. So tax deferred savings plans can, a lot of people love those, lowers their taxes now, but it can increase your taxes in retirement, especially if you have other sources of retirement. And if the federal tax brackets go up, again, President Biden is talking about getting rid of the Trump tax cuts. That's going to increase the taxes for everybody, and especially those that do have some savings and assets. through retirement. So we're going to really hammer in on that on Thursday. So for the topic of the day, student loans. Student loans are kind of the elephant in the room a lot of times when we talk to people. Either they have large student loans that they can't pay, they're not paying, or they're trying to handle them. So this first article, I've got two articles I'm going to share on student loan debt. It's quadrupled in the past 20 years, which means 400% increase in student loan debt. Why? So since 2003, it's gone up by 430%. So there's a lot of different reasons why, and we're going to kind of delve into them. But how do you actually deal with this? It's now tied with car loan debt, consisting on average 10% of overall household debt. Auto and mortgage debt have outpaced inflation, so those are some of the more extreme costs out there. Credit card debt has grown by 33%, but not as fast as, from 2010 to 2016, and it was even lower in 2003. So again, we're seeing more and more debt being added to consumers and placing a larger financial burden on taxpayers and on their ability to stay ahead of their debt. So again, looking at Generation X, which is my generation, has the highest average student loan debt at $44,290, and the largest number of borrowers at 21.2 million. So we have more borrowers and the higher debt. And so the real concern is, is my generation able to save for retirement, or are they stuck paying huge student loan bills? Millennials have lower student loan debt so far, but we have their parents have a higher amount, $42,520. Much of those loans taken out to support their children's education. So ironically, we see this where, and this is very, very common today, they've made it where not only is the student responsible, but they ask for parents to co-sign on student loans, making them personally responsible for it. So they're at risk of not only having their Social Security benefits garnished, but other assets considered. I mean, defaulting on student loans is not a good thing. Can't be discharged in bankruptcy. It's one of the worst debts out there as far as getting rid of it. And of course, student loan debt increase has gone hand in hand with increases in college tuition, which has been nuts. From September of 2002 to 22, tuition inflation has grown by 68%. So, and if you look at the larger universities, it's just nuts. I mean, you can easily pay $60,000 to $70,000 a year at high-end universities. So again, it can be very crazy, which again can discourage people from going to college and doing that. But the idea that we'll just take on student loan debt and not have to pay it or not be responsible for it is a huge misnomer. So what do we need? We need enhanced awareness, planning programs tailored to each generation. There's a way they can offer match savings programs for millennials to save for their first home. I mean, there's different incentives you can provide, but I think one of the biggest problems here is whenever you have the government throwing money at a problem, we want to make college affordable for everybody. So we make student loans available for everybody. Very little credit checks. We're giving hundreds of thousands of dollars away, but the problem is that the tuition has increased faster than the availability of student loans. Well, I mean, there's plenty of availability of student loans, but faster than the resulting incomes when people come out of student loans. So people say student loans are a racket. They're probably right. But who's making it worse? The federal government. And the whole idea of canceling student loans, all it does is pass the buck on to taxpayers. Many of them, never went to college or paid off their student loans, and the people that did that are being forced to handle the student loan debt for others, and we're paying interest on top of the interest from the student loans. So our interest in the national debt has already gone through the roof. So, last article here. Student debt relief in limbo with ongoing court cases. So, call it what you will. The Biden administration's insistence on canceling student loans and coming down with executive action after executive action. There's no authorization from Congress. The courts have ruled against him, even going as high as the Supreme Court. All of this is probably going to get ripped backwards, and it's going to be very painful, and it's going to upset a lot of people. And that's part of the reason that this was done. When you dive into the politics of it, it's really unpopular to take stuff away from people. So if you're seen as the person trying to help people and give out all kinds of goodies, it doesn't matter that you're throwing that on the backs of taxpayers and causing the national debt to continue to climb even faster. Politically, you always want to be the nice guy giving stuff to people. The problem is there's always a cost. So, and you have people doing income-based repayment plans, but the principal balance never went down because they weren't paying enough. And even on those, the problem is that we have the availability of student loans is too high. If you cut down and got rid of the availability of student loans, then people would have to be very cost conscious about what schools they went to. Is a trade school going to provide more bang for their buck? And if they knew they'd have to pay these loans, because here's the simple trick. When all these get held and struck down, which it looks like eventually it will be, again, rightly or wrongly, especially with the makeup of our current Supreme Court, they're going to have to end up paying these. You can't discharge student loans in bankruptcy. You can't, there's no offer and compromise or anything like that for student loans. They will get paid or the person dies. That's really the only two ways to resolve it. So again, President Biden is still trying to, another executive action, part of the SAVE program. So here's a comment from bankruptcy attorney Karen Cody Hopkins. It says, if you get a bill that's supposed to be paid in July under the SAVE plan, you should plan to pay for that now, because there aren't any horrible consequences because of the on-ramp plan. So they're not going to put you in default if you don't make the plan payments, but you should pay now if you've been forbearance, because the forbearance is probably going to come off, and that means they're going to have to pay in August, and any of these payments you don't make get added to the end and only increases the interest you pay over time. So kicking the can down the road for student loans is not a good idea. It doesn't help in the long run. And these forbearances or income-based repayment plans can help in many ways, but if you, it can actually hurt in the long run and hurt your savings, your ability to pay and move on with your life. So they're trying to recalculate payments based on discretionary income, etc. But when this gets struck down, which it most likely was, it's going to leave people in a worse place. And really, that's what we should hope that our government and politicians are doing, is putting people in a better place financially long term. And I'm up against another break. We'll have to be right back. Okay, so diving into student loan debt. How does the IRS treat it? First of all, they treat it as an allowable expense if it's if you're person liable for it. So a young person that goes and they get student loan debt and they're making monthly payments on the student loan. If it's in forbearance, if you're not paying on it, you won't get any credit for it. But they will give you credit for what you're actually paying because you're technically paying the federal government back for guaranteed loans. And if you default on it and you never pay it, it affects the federal government. So that's why their IRS is very not gracious, but they'll give you full credit for those payments. Where a lot of people make the mistake is they have their student loans on forbearance, or they're only paying a very small percentage of them, if at all. But it also has to be for college education. Tuition costs for K through 12 are not allowed unless you have a very specific situation. If someone has to go to a specific school for health or mental reasons, so they have a specific need that can't be accommodated by the public school system. I've had parents where their children were bullied, sometimes by by the teachers. And I had one case in New York. New York is having a lot of anti-Semitic issues, and they pulled their kids out. And a lot of Jewish families are putting their kids in private tuition schools, which is expensive. The IRS is not going to consider that. So the tuition cost for these loans has to be college education, and it has to be through normal public and private student loans. So ironically, I had someone that was going to college. They were paying the tuition out of pocket, and they were just working, saving it up, and paying their tuition as they went. And the IRS wasn't going to give them any credit for the tuition being paid as she went along. And I said, look, if you looking at your financial situation here, all you have to do is flip it. Take out student loans, which I normally don't recommend people getting further in debt. But they gave her credit for, once she flipped it, took out the student loans, and then she started paying it throughout the year. They gave her credit for the monthly payments she was paying, and she qualified for a much better resolution. And once she was done with the IRS, she was able to flip things back and do that. But again, it's you have to. So again, if you're still in school, you're not paying on it, you're not going to get any credit for it. If you were a parent and you're paying for your students, this is what we see all the time. If you're paying for your students to go through college, you're paying the tuition, sometimes room and board. It can be very expensive to pay for someone to go through college. If you take out student loans, however, again, very expensive, and we saw how this is really affecting the baby boomer generation that's taking out student loans to pay for their kids to go to college. If you're paying the tuition directly, if you have IRS issues, they're not going to give you any credit for it whatsoever. And on the flip side, if you are paying the student loans, you take student loans and then you pay them, you'll get 100% credit for it. So a lot of it is looking at where you're going to get credit for it. If you take out loans, you're going to pay interest, etc. So it's not the best idea out there, but it is a ways that if you are supporting your kids through college, the IRS does not typically allow for those expenses at all. I had one situation where a mother, her was a widow, and her son was going through medical school, and she had promised her dying husband that she would make sure he got through medical school and she would support him through medical school. Well, that's great, but the IRS is not going to subsidize that. Most people don't get the chance, nor can they afford to go to medical school. So we had to have her switch things up, reconsider how things were being done. And she was, paying most of her income to support her son going through medical school. But if they were able to switch that up and get her taken care of, where it was done through loans instead of, it's one option. Now be aware, student loan debt cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. You can't just default on it and do an offer and compromise. It will hound you. Defaulted student loans will stick around until you die or you pay it off. One of the two. So again, it's one of those, because it's so hard to get rid of. That's really the main reason that the IRS allows for payments, and basically you're paying the government back. So a lot of it is how you set it up, how you arrange it. But if you are paying your children's student loans and you're not personally liable for it, the IRS will give you a big goose egg of credit for it. So no credit. Do not go to Go, do not, or pass Go, don't collect $200. No credit. So you could be paying $1,500 a month to support your children in school. And if it's not for a student loan that you signed for and you are also liable for, the IRS will give you zero credit for it. So be aware of that as well. Some of the other kinds of debt, and this is really where I want to wrap up. You want to be very mindful of what kind of debt is allowed and what isn't allowed. And here's the crazy part. The IRS is hiding the ball more than ever and making it harder for people to understand what is allowed and what isn't, especially when you're doing an offer and compromise. I had a case where the client was very concerned that, look, they're not allowing for a state tax debt that she's paying on. She has to pay it. It's a secure debt. She'll get credit for a portion of that, but that IRS is looking at it and they won't include it. They won't include it. But they will include it as well as other kinds of tax payments if they're going to accept the offer. So it's very disingenuous that they're saying we're not going to include it in our calculations, but then we will when we accept the offer. So, and they're doing that with other exemptions that people are entitled to. And so if you don't know better, when you send the charts, and then again, these are recent changes within the last 3 years, it's designed to give people the false impression that they're further away from acceptance than they actually are. And there's no other reason for it than it's misleading taxpayers. So if you're asking for a secured debt, most secured debts you'll get full credit for. So secured debts being title loans on vehicles, any kind of vehicle loan or lease, your home loan, furniture loans, appliance loans, anything like that for solar, that it's attached to a real thing. So if you default on that, they can come and either seize the property or come after your assets. So credit card debt goes with that. A lot of people, it's a very big and very common thing, is that people owe a lot in credit card debt. Don't put taxes on credit card debt. 9 times out of 10, it's just a really bad decision. You're going to pay just as much interest on credit cards than with the IRS. The IRS is nastier, but you have more options in dealing with them. You can go and do a low payment plan. I had someone that came to me and literally put $20,000 on a credit card debt between the state and the IRS. And the only good thing about it is that they paid off the state. And got rid of the state, but now they have this massive credit card debt. And the IRS, even though they spent $10,000 paying off IRS debt, gave her zero credit for that credit card debt, even though she used it to pay off the taxes. Go figure. We were able to do an offer and compromise for her, but when she realized that she now owed $50,000 instead of $60,000, and we could have wiped out the $60,000 with the same fact pattern, but she was only going to get $50,000 relief because she put it on a credit card. She was like, well, why did I do that? It's like, because you didn't get good advice. I recently had someone that, paying off credit card debt is seen as a very bad move as well. They were hiring us. We told them what to do, what not to do, and they were getting some money to be able to pay our legal fees, to hit the ground running. And they got the settlement. They hired us. And then, even though we told them not to, they went and paid off a bunch of credit card debt. We had to refund them most of their money because they no longer qualify for an offer and compromise. Not our fault. But again, it was, we refunded most of the fee because they didn't qualify anymore. Paying off credit card debt can be a huge mistake. People do it all the time because it's the worst thing. If you can make monthly payments, you can, put a little bit towards it, but large chunks of money, paying off credit card debt can absolutely hurt you with the IRS. Tax debt has priority, so credit card debt can absolutely hurt people. So just be mindful of what is good debt, what is bad debt out there, and try to avoid high interest debt at all if you can. One of the most common things are vehicle loan debt, which is very particular about how you go about it. Sometimes you don't need to get a loan to get a vehicle that will help you save a lot of money with the IRS. So if you have those questions, if you're preparing to deal with the IRS, and most people are also dealing with and grappling with other kinds of debt, talk to a tax professional. We do free consultations. We explain things to people and answer your questions so that way you don't make a big mistake that can really hurt you when dealing with the IRS. And we see it happen all the time. Student loans are considered a good type of debt. Credit cards are typically the worst kind of debt. Life insurance, depending on the kind, can be very good or bad if it has cash value or not. And that's a whole nother conversation. But again, each kind of debt can be treated differently. But the general rule of thumb is unsecured debt is not allowed by the IRS unless it's for medical bills, unless it's for your health, mental and physical, or self-care that you need. So anything doctor ordered that you owe for, they'll typically allow for that. Now, people ask about gym memberships all the time. I'm saying, well, if it's doctor ordered, it's like, well, my doctor wants me to go. It's like, they're not going to give you a prescription to go to the gym. If you have a particular condition where, yes, you need to go and do this exercise, and he tells you go to the gym and do it instead of physical therapy. Normally, you'll get credit for the physical therapy, but not going to the gym. But paying past due medical bills, dental bills, vision, those are all allowable debts, even though they're not secured, that you can, instead of just paying them off, we suggest that you usually set up a monthly payment plan, and that can help you. Or if you have extra funds, you can pay off some of those debts as well that are allowable versus debt that will create more problems for you. Again, best thing you can do, call us. We'll walk through the financial analysis with you. We'll tell you what is what's a good decision financially for you, what's not a good decision financially, and what's going to help you or hurt you with the IRS. So our whole goal is to make it easy, lay it out for you, give you the good advice that you need, so that way you can prepare for the future. Not only resolve your IRS debt, but one thing I talk to people all the time is make sure you're not going to owe, and then start planning for your financial future. And so that's why we're going to have this financial planner. His name is Stephen Mayer, and he will be on in 2 days. And we're going to sit down and talk about what he sees that hurts people financially and how people can prepare for financial success in the long term. Because that really, having growth of wealth, income mobility, where people can save, they can prepare and improve their situation, not only for them, but for their children. That is the American dream, where people can be financially secure. That is real freedom, is where you are ahead of the game and you feel comfortable. And that's the kind of peace of mind that we strive every day to provide to people here at Guardian Tax Law. So again, give us a call at 520-485-7371 if you have any questions. You can talk directly to a tax attorney, and or you can reach out to us through guardiantaxlaw.com, our website, and we have a lot of links. All these videos are available for free through our YouTube channel. And again, just recommend that. Any questions you have, give us a call, and we'll walk you through that. And again, we don't do a high pressure sales pitch. So focusing on, just taking a step back for student loans. Main takeaway here, if you are responsible for it financially, the IRS will give you credit for it in the main, as long as it's for college tuition, college expenses, etc. If it's not for college tuition, you probably aren't going to get credit for it. Or if you're paying those bills and it's not going, the federal government isn't on the hook. They don't care. So it really is. They want to make sure that you're paying your student loans, so the government gets paid eventually, and that's the whole reason why they do allow student loans. So I hope this was informative, and we'll see everybody tomorrow for another session, and then we're going to have that live interview on Thursday with the financial advisor. And we're going to try to start doing live interviews more often as we move forward. So I hope you have a great day, and if you have questions, write them down and just give us a call. Thank you for watching, and we will see you tomorrow.